Hello everyone, I hope you're all having a lovely day. In this following tutorial, I'm going to show you how to set up MediaPipe face and webcam hand tracking inside of Warudo. So that way, if you are someone who prefers using webcam, or if you don't have an iPhone and you don't have Android and you want to use webcam tracking, then we're going to utilize MediaPipe. As MediaPipe's training data, it's actually really pretty well done for webcam. Of course, it still needs some tinkering, of course, but that's what we're going to work on in this tutorial. So do keep in mind that MediaPipe is not fully an iPhone replacement. Google needs to still work on improving the training data, at least on the face area. For the webcam hand tracking, it's not 100% a replacement for leap motion, but again, I would say like it's a little bit closer because the webcam hand for MediaPipe is actually pretty well done. So it's a matter of preference. If you prefer webcam hand tracking, then use that. If you don't like MediaPipe webcam hand tracking, you can use VC. For the time being, use VC Face with a leap motion, but there is going to be a future update where it'll have leap motion natively in Warudo. But either way, though, pretty much. And as for the face tracking can derp out a little bit, but there are some settings we can use in Warudo to help alleviate it or decrease the derpiness. But either way, in order to get that started, what we're going to do is we're going to go into motion capture. Click on set up motion capture. Then for the face tracking template, select MediaPipe. You can choose ARKit if you have the ARKit blend shape, but if you don't have the ARKit blend shapes or you don't know what they are, please choose VRM instead and utilize that. But for my case, I have ARKit blend shapes, which means I can utilize MediaPipe in the full. VRM can still look really good with MediaPipe though, just want to say. But pretty much for the input camera, I'll set that to Elgato. For my case, I want to have the head and body movements, but if you have like body tracking, you may want to disable that. But for this case, because we're going to have webcam hands, we need to have this as yes. You can of course set this accordingly. If you want lip sync, you can enable it and all that. You will have to mess with the blueprints a little bit to kind of get the lip sync working. I have another tutorial that explains it. Might end up remaking that tutorial, but either way, basically you can have lip sync if you want. It does help the tracking a little bit more for MediaPipe, but otherwise, we're going to click on OK. As for the pose tracking, we want this to be MediaPipe webcam. We can also have keyboard and trackpad, so that way, if we want to do some typing stuff, we can utilize this. And then, of course, input camera will be Elgato. So yeah, and then we'll click on OK. And then pretty much we're going to wait till this little program here opens up. And once you start seeing that the FPS is showing up, basically, you can raise your hand and basically wave. Hello, hello, hello. So pretty much, as you can see, the quality of the tracking is really pretty good. You might want to do some fine tuning, which I will show you how to do some fine tuning. So that way you'll feel a little bit more comfortable with your webcam tracking, basically. So what we're going to do, of course, we're going to focus on I'm going to go ahead and disable this right here. But for MediaPipe tracking, we want to start off with the face tracking first, and then we're going to get into the webcam hands. Again, I'll have the timestamps, depending on which one you want to edit first. But either way, you can, of course, show and freeze camera. I'm not going to click on those, though. You can set the process priority to be high or low, depending on what you want. I usually leave these settings alone, basically. You can have mirror tracking if you prefer that, but the default, I prefer it. But again, it depends on you. So we're going to be on face tracking, so we want this to be enabled. And for calibrate eye movement, this is referring to if you were to press the calibrate button, it will reset your eyes. Some people may prefer it, some people may not, so it depends. Configure blend shape mapping. This is very, very important to do in order to make your face tracking a lot more better with MediaPipe. Now, luckily with Warudo, they actually have like pre-existing edited settings to make the face tracking look a lot more better. However, though, you may want to do some fine tuning. So let's say for my blinking, I feel like it may need a little bit of some work. So I can probably mess with some of these settings here, basically, to kind of like fine tune it to how I want it, basically. So primarily, I would say mess with the input settings right here, basically, and mess around with it however you want, basically. So because like the output, I would not recommend messing with it too much. It's like VTube Studio, basically. So if you ever touch VTube Studio, it's pretty much that same method. So basically, like here, what this is, I can't really like fully explain exactly because I'm still learning VTube Studio myself. But basically, right here, this is basically like kind of making it so that way, basically here this is making it so that way my blinking happens more faster. So the lower the number, the more quicker the blend shape will transition to when it's activated. And then this one would kind of make it so that way it kind of sort of like, so this basically like if you make the number higher, it makes it sort of like it happens early, I guess, if that makes sense. I'm not sure how to properly explain it, but again, play around with the settings here though. But either way, usually I would kind of have it, at least for MediaPipe, you may want to have a little bit of a number here, like 0.1. It depends on which one, of course, not all of them need it. But at least for blinking, you may want to have it like this, and this one you may want to, if you want to make the blend shape happen faster, then you can set the number here lower. So I can go to jaw open here real quick, just to show you. I can set this to probably, let's say, 0.6 here, and that way it makes my jaw move a lot more. I could also have, let's see, let's say mouse funnel. Let's see if we can find. So mouse funnel, I'll also have it so it's like slightly lower too. That way my mouse movements are more emphasized. So definitely highly recommend, please mess around with these blend shapes, as it can definitely help your tracking look a lot better. Again, I wouldn't say overly edit, of course, but take your time setting it up, because you could definitely get some really good blend shape quality or face tracking quality with it. Do keep in mind though, there is no tongue out and there is no cheek puff support, sadly, but hopefully if Google, which it will definitely take a while, whenever Google updates their training data for MediaPipe, hopefully we will one day get cheek puff for webcam. But until then though, we'll have to wait till the update happens. Now, once you finish configuring your blend shapes, we're going to go ahead and try to make our movements more, because right now we look a bit stiff, unless you prefer it, but for the most part, our tracking is a bit stiff, so we need to improve it. So what we're going to do, of course, is we're going to, if you want to move up and down more, you may want to increase the y-axis. If you want to move more left and right, you may want to increase the x-axis here, depending on what you prefer. So you can move this more. And then the axis is referring to back and front, like this. Wah! So yeah, so that way you have much more movement. Wah! As for maximal head translation, this is referring to, I believe, the maximum when it comes to like head movement, I believe. Again, I don't really play with this too much, but I kind of play with it, but I don't see much of a difference. But you can experiment it. You know, you can click and drag, see if it might do a change for you. But otherwise, I usually leave it as default. For body movement, if you want to move more easily, you may want to increase this so you have more body movement, basically. As for head rotation, because by default your head is probably hardly moving, you may want to increase this. If you increase the y-axis, it makes it so your head can look left and right easily, x-axis for nodding up and down, and then z-axis for head tilt, like that. Wah! There you go. Now you should be moving a lot more with your webcam tracking. Wah, wah, wah. Maximal head rotation is referring to your max rotation when you move up and down, I believe. Usually I would set this to 90 degrees, at least personally me, but otherwise I don't see too much of a difference, but you can mess around with the settings if you like. Head rotation offset is if your head is slightly angled the wrong way, you may want to slightly correct it a little bit. But again, it really depends on, it depends on if you want it. You don't have to. I would be a little careful with offsets because sometimes it can be a little weird sometimes. But either way, you can set it up, of course. Eye movement intensity. This is highly recommended if you're going to utilize eye bones, because it can actually add more movement to your eyes when you look around, basically. So yeah. But otherwise, I personally use blend shape eyes as it's a lot more better in quality, at least how my model's set up. But for other models, you may prefer bone eyes. It might be better for you. Again, it depends on how the model's set up. So if you have bone eyes, definitely mess with this pretty much. I think I also can apply with blend shapes too, but usually my blend shapes are good enough. As for the eye movement compensation, if you were rotating your head, basically, you notice how your eyes are facing in the front, basically. If I were to increase the x-axis, it makes it so your eyes can move a lot more naturally, a lot more realistically, basically. It's a nice little touch, basically. So you might wanna, you might wanna have a little bit of this, because it really does help give that more natural feel to your eyes. So, yeah. But either way, though, and of course, keep in mind this only works with bone-based eyes for the time being. It might update so it works with blend shapes, but otherwise, though, it depends. Eye blink sensitivity. If your eyes are not, blinking enough, you may want to increase this so it's much more, your blinking should be happening a lot more easier, but again, it depends. I would still recommend messing around with the blend shape mapping here. Again, the blend shape mapping only works if you have the AirKit blend shapes. If you have the VRM blend shapes, then you might want to use the slider here. If by any chance, let's say you see how my model, like, one eye is, like, half-lidded, basically. Let's say you don't wink so often, you want the eye blinking to look a little bit more natural. You can click on linked eye blinking, that way the blinking looks a bit more natural, but again, it depends. If you wink a lot, you may want to keep this off, so you can wink. Otherwise, though, if you want to keep them both together, then please have this on. Limit eye squint is that if you smile very heavily, it limits it. Otherwise, it kind of helps make you a little less smiley, if that makes sense, if you're overly smiley. But I usually have this set to no, though. I usually just use the blend configuration to correct it. As for use bones for eye movement, again, if you're a Void model, use Hana Tool, or if you just prefer bones, I would recommend have this as on. Otherwise, for me personally, I don't use bones for my character. I actually use the the blend shape eyes. You can also average the eye rotation. This can probably help if you have weird eye rotation movement. But otherwise, though, I'll set this to be none. And we're going to utilize blend shape eyes, because as you can see, for my model, it looks a lot more better in terms of the blend shapes, basically. Alright, and pretty much for the most part, though, we should be good. And pretty much once you have that set up, the next thing, of course, is hand tracking. So yeah, so basically what we're going to do, and also I keep looking to the right side of my screen. I'm probably gonna, like, for now, just so my eyes can stay in front, I'll have the bone eyes here, but if I really wanted to use this, I would do a lot of adjustments. But either way, though, we're going to set up webcam hand tracking, our favorite thing about Warudo. Raise your hands in the air like you just don't care, because we got webcam hand tracking. Okay, so let's try and make our webcam hand tracking better. So make sure that it is, of course, set to enabled. When it comes to calibrating your hand tracking, this is highly recommended that you do it so it makes your hand placements a little bit more accurate. So how to calibrate it? You're going to click on calibrate hand tracking. You're going to take one hand, right? For my case, my right hand is on my mouse and my left hand is in the air. You need to make sure that your thumb, where your thumb is close to your ear. Not exactly on your ear, but it's aligned to your ear, basically. And it's in the air, and basically, kind of like, I guess, sort of, I can't really show my face. Again, I don't want to dox myself. But basically, pretty much you have your hand in the air. align with your ear, and also visible in the camera view. If it's too high like this, you're going to have a bad calibration, so please make sure that it's aligned properly. Then click on OK once you are properly aligned, and then you should be able to have much more proper calibration in regarding to your hand placement. Very good. But now we gotta do a little bit more adjustment, basically. So, of course, you can invert your hands, basically kind of like mirroring your hand tracking if you prefer that. But otherwise, I usually leave it so mine is inverted, but you can have it set to no. Then what we're going to do, I'm going to have it where my hand is like pretty much in the air, basically. Hello, hello, hello. So basically what we're going to do is that for the hand movement range, we can slightly increase it. So if you want to make it so your hands move more easily, you can increase the range a bit more. That way your hand isn't like too stiff. You can make it so you can just move more, like have a little party, like hold on, beep beep beep, everybody party party, like that. You could do like a movement like that, basically, so it's really nice. Do keep in mind though, your IRL hands can't move too fast or too much, unless of course you properly mounted your camera, which, in case you're wondering about webcam mounting, it's recommended. It depends. Your webcam doesn't have to be too perfect of a setup, but it is recommended that the webcam is perfectly aligned to where your nose is at. That would be the best recommendation. Otherwise though, if you cannot have it like that, then having it above your desktop monitor pointing down at you should be good. You could also have it where it's under your monitor as well, but just make sure that it's just aligned properly as best as possible, basically. So either way, we can increase that. We can also make the range a little bit bigger here. I wouldn't do too much though. The default settings are pretty good, but you may want to have a little bit more of a movement. And then of course the axis is referring to pushing forward and back, which I'll add a little bit, but yeah, like this. Then of course offset. So let's say my hands right now, they're too low, right? So they're too low, but my hands are like really high in the air. So basically you can have the offset sort of correct the placement, basically. I usually primarily use the Z axis or the like Z and Y axis to correct my hand placement, basically, for the most part. But otherwise though, X you could do in case like your hand placement is set incorrectly. But again, play with the settings however you want, basically. So yeah. Anyways though, so pretty much though, the next thing we're going to do is hand horizontal distance compensation. In case you don't know what the heck I just said, this is referring to if your hands are going to be touching each other. This is what this saying is for. It's supposed to help make it so your hands can touch each other. So if you increase the value, which I wouldn't increase it too crazy, start off a little, because it will make it so your tracking does kind of drift so they can touch each other. Like as you can see, the drifting is happening. So I might have to increase this a little more. Come on, hands. You can touch each other. There you go. There you go. See? A little bit of misalignment. There you go. Yeah. Again, it's not super perfect, but you can be able to have it where your hands are touching each other, sort of. Blah. But yeah, pretty much it's pretty cool. You may, of course, depending on the model, you may want to change it a little bit more. But again, do keep in mind, don't make it too high, because again, it will cause a little bit of drifting to your hand tracking, just so that way you can have your hands touch each other, basically. So, yeah. But either way, though, as for hand Y threshold, this is referring to if by any chance there is a hand in the background of your environment. You may want to increase this a bit more, so that way the tracking, if there's a hand detected in the background, it won't be seen that too easily. But again, if you by any chance make it too high, then it will make it a lot harder for your hands to track, and it'll kind of derp out a little bit. So I would recommend have like a sort of semi-low value. Again, it depends on your environment. So definitely highly recommend, please check out the little tracker right here to make sure that, you know, if there's any sort of like flickering of your tracking, then yeah, adjust from there. Anyways, camera diagonal field of view. This is recommended to adjust if you know your camera specification. If you don't know, it's perfectly fine. But basically, you'll have to look up on Google or wherever your instruction manual is for your webcam. And for my case, I have the Elgato Face Cam, so mine is 82. But yours may be different though. So basically, you just look up, depending on your camera's brand, just look up where you got the camera from or anything like that. And then you'll have to look up, camera brand, whatever your brand is, Elgato, Logitech, and then type in diagonal field of view, and hopefully the results should pop up on Google basically. So yeah. Anyways, so besides that though, camera aspect ratio, it's recommended to keep it the way it is. Otherwise, if your camera is a bit more low res, you may want to adjust it so the tracking quality is accurate. So yeah. Anyways though, hand push Z max, this is basically referring to the hands will be pushed forward if they get too close to the body. I do not recommend making this too high again. I would just make it a little bit, again, like take it slow basically. Just so that way you don't make it too obnoxious basically when it comes to editing. But this definitely will help you out if your hands are getting too close to your body. So it just makes it feel a little bit more natural basically. So yeah. As for hand push Y range, basically, this is basically the hands are basically pushed forward, of course, further. I'm literally reading what it says here. It says hands are pushed forward, further down the shoulders. When they are this value from the shoulders, they are pushed forward to the maximum, basically. So basically, let's say I'm gonna actually have this as a okay, so let's say I have this as 0.5 basically. If I have it where I put my hands in the air like I just don't care basically, from the shoulders, basically, I'm not sure how to describe this in English, sadly, but basically, if the hands are pushed further down the shoulders or something, then I believe they're pushed forward. I believe I can't properly describe it. The description here explains pretty much what it is, but I can't summarize or simplify this phrasing basically. But when I'm again mess around with setting basically pretty much. I personally have this as the default setting honestly. But again, you may want to experiment a little bit more, but default setting for me on that is usually good. So yeah. Again, I apologize I couldn't explain that properly. My brain just like English. So basically, now let's just go into hand push Y offset in this case. So this one just range, but this one is offset. So basically, if the value is 0, the hands are pushed starting at the shoulders basically. So like if we did set this to be 0 basically, I guess I'm not exactly sure. I know this is offset, so it kind of changes the position basically, while the other one is referring to range. Probably setting up the maximum basically. So it's like when I was talking about the maximal head position thing and then rotation. I'm pretty sure it's like that basically, but it's for the hand tracking. But personally, again, I would have it at its default value, just out of preference really. But again, you may want to play with a setting. Maybe it'll be different for your model because every model is unique in their own way. So yeah. Hand calibration distance, you do not touch this. The values are determined when you go up here and click on calibrate hand tracking. So that's what those boxes are for. You do not touch it. You could, but I would not recommend it. I would just recommend just recalibrate it. Anyways, then you have shoulder rotation correction. It's recommended to have it as yes, but if by any chance you're having some weird shoulder stuff, you may want to have this as no, depending on if it, if you need it off or anything like that. But you can have it as yes, basically, and you should be good. Finger rotation offsets. This is referring to if you have a very weird finger. Let's say like I want my thumb to be having a different offset. Then you can of course basically have it so that way you could change the value up. As you can see, you can basically just change the offset so that way it's more correct basically, in case like let's say your thumbs have a different shape or something like that, maybe have bigger hands or something. So you can definitely mess around to fine tune the hand tracking basically. So once you have that, of course, then you have the finger horizontal bend and backwards basically. So horizontal bend, which I will try to zoom in real closely on my fingers basically. Hello. So basically, if we increase the horizontal bend, this is referring to which direction your fingers will be at. So adjust accordingly. Wow. As for the backwards bend, this is referring to, because realistically, like in real life, you have it where your fingers will slightly bend a bit. I'm gonna try to position mine. Yeah, so like this basically. So if you were to, so basically right now you can see my fingers bending backwards slightly. You can have it so that way the bend could be increased or decreased basically. Again, it depends on your model setup, but there you go, you have that nice slight, backward bend basically. Really natural. So yeah. And then of course the distal bone rotation intensity. This is referring usually, I believe, to the fingertips basically. So yeah. As you can see it right here basically. So when I basically do the whole like fist right here, then you can adjust how much it'll bend basically. So yeah, there you go. And then pretty much, of course, you can limit the bone rotation. It's recommended to have it as yes, because that's the reason why also Warudo's finger tracking looks a lot like very natural, because there is there is constraints being added to the fingers. If you have it set so it's set to no, you'll notice how sort of crooked the fingers are. So it's recommended to keep it as yes, so that way the finger rotation is much more natural basically. So yeah. Oh, and before I forget, if by any chance, because I have seen this question many times, how would you correct if your hand tracking feels a bit sluggish? Well, there is a bit of a solution for that. I could be wrong, but I'm going to show you, at least to my knowledge, how to make the hand tracking a little bit more faster. So you're going to go into blueprints, and it depends on if it's for the face tracking or if it's for the webcam hands. Let's say we're going to do this for the webcam hands basically. So choose pose tracking, MediaPipe. You're going to scroll outward, and then there should be a node somewhere here, right here, I believe. This is the smooth rotation list. You can basically be able to adjust the slider, so that way you can, if it's reduced, it should be able to make it so your hand tracking is a little bit faster, but I still recommend to have some smoothness, because then it'll make your hand a little bit jittery. But hopefully this should kind of help make it a little bit more responsive. You can also, there's also should be another one as well right there. For positioning, you might also want to decrease that a little bit as well to make your hand tracking a little bit more faster. Again, try not to make it too low of a smoothness, otherwise your hands are just gonna get really jittery. But maybe around 0.25 points up to 0.6 is probably like a good spot, depending on how you set up your tracking and depending on a lot of other factors basically, and also just preference. And I'll even show you also here in MediaPipe here as well, that if you want to, of course, make your tracking a little bit more faster, there's of course a blend shape smoothness as well, but right here in rotation you can decrease this, and that way your tracking is a lot more faster basically. Voila! So yeah. But pretty much though, that's how you can adjust your smoothness basically, in case you feel a little bit sluggish with your tracking. And yeah, I hope that that helps you out, and have a lovely day! But that's pretty much the whole walkthrough on the whole thing, the hand tracking for webcam. Again, take your time messing around with these settings basically. There's a lot of factors that can come into improving your webcam hand tracking, but overall, hopefully this should help you out, at least understanding, at least as best as I can explain it. Again, I apologize if my English is broken sometimes, but I do hope that at least this tutorial helps you out on at least having a better understanding of a couple of these settings. And again, if if anything, you can refer to the Warudo documentation, as the explanation is of course there if you need some extra clarification. But either way though, I hope that this helps you out, and join the Warudo Discord server, as you can be able to ask questions, report bugs, or request features and such. Highly recommended to join. But of course, you can, you can of course message Hakuya's lab on Twitter, or you can of course message on the Steam Workshop basically. But either way though, I hope that this tutorial helps you out, and I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye!